You know, it's pretty amazing when you think about it, but there's no business tax in Australia. That's right. The tax rate for business in Australia is 0 because we don't tax business per se. So I overheard these two people talking about setting up a business in Australia, and the first one says, oh, look, you know, if you set up a business, you're only going to pay 30% tax in Australia, whereas if you work, then you're going to pay marginal rates of taxation, which of course can go as high as 45% plus Medicare levy. And so she's saying that business in Australia is much, much better than working, and I thought that was absolutely crazy. And it occurred to me that what this person had failed to understand was the difference between a business and a company. So I thought I might clarify that. Businesses in Australia pay no tax. So a business involves, you know, buying and selling of goods or services, you know, businesses like we see every day as we drive around the streets. A company, however, is not necessarily a business. Companies are actually just basically a license from the government to have what they know is called as a legal person. So legal personhood really just means anybody who can show up to court and will actually be recognized as being somebody or a something. Now, my dog is not a legal person because my dog cannot go before a judge and go, woof, Your Honor, please help me enforce this contract. Because my dog can't go before a judge to demand enforcement of a contract, then he can't even enter into contracts because essentially those contracts are null and void and useless in the first place. Now, of course, companies or licenses are not individual real people. They're not what's known as natural people. So they actually have to have somebody, you know, a human to show up to court for and on behalf of that company. Those people are known as the directors. They're the ones with the legal rights to be able to do that. But the company itself, that's just a piece of paper. Unincorporated associations, like for example your local tennis club or your local football club that hasn't actually bothered to go and get a license from the government, otherwise known as, you know, corporate registration, isn't actually a legal person. And so unless they decide to go and formulate it in a legal way, then, you know, the tennis club can't go before a judge, which means it can't enter into contracts. And if it can't enter into contracts, then it can't even do things like buy land. So you'll often find these unincorporated associations, which are basically just loose organizations, but they do not have legal personhood. So tax follows the legal form of the organization. If the organization is a company, you're going to pay corporate tax rate. If the organization is legally held by an individual, then it's just going to be the individual rates. A business in the same way is a similar concept because a business is buying and selling. It's an organization, but the legal form or the legal container in which that business is run in can vary. It can be run in the name of a single individual, in which case it's known as a sole trader. That business can be run by 2 or more people as the people who own it, and that's known as a partnership. It can be run by a company, which is, as we said before, a license from the government in order just to basically exist. It can actually also be run by a trust. And a trust is an interesting one because a trust is actually not a legal person, but it almost has the same existence as a legal person because the trust actually must have a legal person as the trustee, and the trustee has all the same natural rights as, say, a natural human, or indeed as granted by the Companies Act. Superannuations can actually also be an entity of sorts. Basically, superannuations are nothing more special than trusts that comply with superannuation law. So they get all sorts of lovely, nice things such as 15% tax rates, but in their legal format, they're really nothing more special than a trust that has certain conditions placed on them. Businesses can also be contained in other sorts of weird relationships, such as a joint venture. Joint venture is a really slippery term because really it just means a legal relationship, usually something that's shared between ordinarily companies. For example, a oil exploration company and BHP might decide to go and set up an oil rig somewhere, and BHP might decide to take all the oil, but the oil exploration company wants to earn a profit on renting out all the equipment or something like that. And so they're actually legally in separate buckets, however they decide to share the spoils. In this sense, it's no more different than cooperation, really. So to make this really clear, business in Australia does not pay income tax. And the reason why business doesn't pay income tax is because business itself is just an organization and it doesn't legally exist. For tax to be levied, it has to be levied against a taxpayer, a person, And so for that reason, business doesn't have tax. But if the business is in a company, then the company will pay tax at the company rate, which happens to be 30%. The thing that makes Australia a little bit different to, say, America or other jurisdictions is that we don't charge different rates of tax depending on what type of income it is. So if you're an individual and you receive wages, then you'll be charged at the ordinary marginal rate of taxation, which varies from year to year, and you should look it up because by the time you're watching this video, it may have changed from when I made it. So as an individual, if you receive wages, you're going to pay individual income tax. If you're an individual and you receive rent, or you receive interest, or you receive dividends, it doesn't really matter what the source of the income is. That assessable income is going to be paid at the individual rate. We do not levy different rates of taxation for different types of income. Thank God, because America does that, and it's just so ridiculously complex. Simplicity is a good thing in the taxation system. Mind you, if it's going to be simple, it also better be fair and efficient. So yeah, it's kind of funny to think about it, but there is no such thing as a business tax in Australia, which is actually a good thing.